My sister showed up at my door holding the deed to my house. Not a copy. The actual deed. She stood there with this smug smile on her face, my parents flanking her like proud bodyguards, and said the words that made my blood run cold. "This is mine now. Mom and Dad signed it over to me yesterday. You need to be out by the end of the month." I stared at the paper in her hands. My grandmother's house. The house I'd been living in for 10 years. The house I'd poured $120,000 into, paying the mortgage month after month while my parents pretended it didn't exist. The house that was supposed to be mine. But apparently, my parents had other plans. They'd decided to gift it to my little sister as a wedding present. No discussion, no warning. Just a dinner announcement and a done deal. And that's when I realized something. For my entire life, I'd been the backup plan, the afterthought, the one who didn't matter. Not anymore. Let me back up. My name is Sarah. I'm 28, and I've spent my whole life watching my parents worship my younger sister Emma. She's 25, beautiful, talented, and according to my parents, absolutely perfect. Emma was the kid who got piano lessons, dance classes, and a brand new car for her 16th birthday. I was the kid who got a bus pass and a reminder to be grateful. It wasn't always obvious. They never sat me down and said, "We love Emma more." But the message was clear in 1,000 tiny ways. When Emma wanted to study art in college, they paid her tuition without blinking. When I wanted to go to nursing school, they told me to take out loans because they couldn't afford it. When Emma needed money for her apartment in the city, they sent checks. When I needed help fixing my car, they said I should learn to budget better. I learned early on that I was on my own, and honestly, I made peace with it. I worked 2 jobs through college. I built a career. I became independent. I didn't need them. But the house, that was supposed to be different. My grandparents left me that house when I was 18. It was a small 3-bedroom cottage about an hour outside the city. Nothing fancy, but it was beautiful. White shutters, a wraparound porch, a backyard with the oak tree I used to climb as a kid. My grandmother used to make lemonade on that porch every summer. My grandfather taught me how to plant tomatoes in the garden. That house held every good memory I had of my childhood. When they passed away, they left it to me. Not Emma. Me. My grandmother even said it out loud before she died. "This house is for you, Sarah. You're going to need it more than your sister." She was right. Emma always had my parents. I had to build my own foundation. I was 18 when I inherited it, and my parents said they'd handle the legal paperwork. The deed was still in their name because of some trust situation I didn't fully understand. They promised they'd transfer it to me when I turned 21, then it was 25. Then it was when you're more financially stable. I was young and trusting. I believed them. Meanwhile, I moved into the house. I started paying the mortgage. Every single month for 10 years, I transferred money into my parents' account because the mortgage was in their name. $1,200 a month like clockwork. That's $144,000 over 10 years. I fixed the roof when it leaked. I replaced the water heater. I repainted every room. I planted new flowers in the garden. I poured my heart and my savings into that house. My parents never asked how I was managing. They never offered to help. They just took the payments and said nothing. Emma, meanwhile, was living her best life. She worked part-time as a freelance artist, which basically meant my parents subsidized her lifestyle while she painted and went to yoga classes. She lived in a trendy apartment downtown that they helped pay for. She drove a car they'd bought her. And last year, she met Jake. Jake came from money, old money, the kind of family that has a lake house and a yacht. Emma was over the moon. My parents were thrilled. Finally, their perfect daughter was getting the perfect life she deserved. The engagement happened fast. 6 months of dating, and Jake proposed with a ring that probably cost more than my car. My parents immediately started planning the wedding of the century. They talked about venues and caterers and flower arrangements like they were planning a royal coronation. The budget kept climbing. 50,000, 70,000, 100,000. I watched all of this from the sidelines. I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. I wasn't asked for input. I was just expected to show up and smile. That was fine. I had my own life. My boyfriend Daniel and I were talking about getting engaged. I had my house and my career and my independence. I thought I was safe. I thought the one thing they couldn't touch was the home my grandparents gave me, the home I'd built with my own hands and my own money. I was wrong. 3 months before Emma's wedding, my parents invited Daniel and me over for dinner. It was unusual. We didn't do family dinners often, maybe twice a year at most, but Mom called and said they wanted to discuss something important related to the wedding. I figured they wanted me to contribute money or help with planning. I steeled myself for the ask. Daniel and I showed up on a Thursday night. Emma and Jake were already there, sitting at the table looking way too pleased with themselves. My parents were buzzing with excitement. Mom had made pot roast, which was weird because she only made pot roast for special occasions. We made small talk through the first course. Emma gushed about wedding dress shopping. Jake talked about their honeymoon plans in Italy. I nodded and smiled and felt completely disconnected from all of it. This wasn't my world. These weren't my people, but they were my family, so I played along. Then, right as Mom brought out dessert, she dropped the bomb. "We have wonderful news. Your father and I have decided to give Emma your grandmother's house as a wedding gift." The room went silent. At least, I think it did. Maybe everyone else kept talking. I couldn't hear anything over the ringing in my ears. I put down my fork. I looked at my mother, then at my father, then at Emma, who was smiling like she'd just won the lottery. "Wait, what?" My voice came out hoarse. Dad cleared his throat. "We think it's the perfect gift. Emma and Jake need a place to start their life together. The house is paid off. Well, almost. And it's got plenty of space for when they have children." "Paid off?" I repeated slowly. "I've been paying the mortgage for 10 years. Mom waved her hand dismissively. "You've been living there, dear. Consider it rent." Rent. She called it rent. $144,000 in rent for a house that was supposed to be mine. "That house is mine," I said. My hands were shaking. "Grandma left it to me." "Technically," Dad said, using his calm lawyer voice that always made me feel like a child, "the house is still in our name. We never transferred the deed to you, so legally it's ours to do with as we please." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All those years, all those promises that they'd transfer it soon. They'd never intended to. They'd kept it in their name deliberately. They'd been planning this. "I've put over $120,000 into that house," I said. My voice was rising. Daniel put his hand on my arm, but I shook him off. "I've fixed everything. The roof, the plumbing, the electrical. I've paid the mortgage every single month for a decade." "And we're grateful for that," Mom said sweetly. "You've taken excellent care of it. That's why it's in such great shape for Emma and Jake." Emma finally spoke. "Jake and I absolutely loved the house when Mom and Dad showed it to us last week. The porch is perfect. We're thinking of having the reception there, actually." They'd shown her the house, behind my back, while I was at work, probably. They'd walked through my home, planned their future in it, and decided it was theirs. "Emma needs this more than you do," Mom continued. "She's starting a family. You're not even married yet, and you've always been so independent. You'll land on your feet." Independent. The word they used when they meant, "We don't have to help you." The word that had defined my entire childhood. "This is insane," I said. I looked at Daniel. He looked as shocked as I felt. "You can't just give away my house." "It's not your house," Dad said firmly. "It's ours, and we've made our decision." I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. "I need to go." "Sarah, don't be dramatic," Mom said. "Sit down and finish your dessert. We can discuss the moving timeline." "Moving timeline?" Emma pulled out her phone. "We're thinking you should be out by the end of next month. That gives us 3 months before the wedding to renovate." I looked at her. Really looked at her. My little sister. The girl I'd grown up with. There wasn't an ounce of guilt or sympathy in her eyes. Just entitlement. Just expectation. She genuinely believed she deserved this. I walked out without another word. Daniel followed me. I made it to the car before I started shaking so hard I couldn't drive. Daniel took the keys and drove us home while I sat in the passenger seat and tried not to scream. They'd stolen my house. My family had stolen my house. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table, the kitchen I'd renovated myself, and I tried to process what had happened. Daniel made coffee and sat with me. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened while I spiraled. They planned this, I kept saying. They never intended to give me this house. They've been waiting for the right moment to take it back. Daniel squeezed my hand. What do you want to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What could I do? The deed was in their name. I'd been naive enough to trust them, stupid enough to believe that family meant something. I called them the next morning. Mom answered on the third ring. We need to talk about the house, I said. Sweetheart, we already discussed this. The decision is made. I've paid $120,000 into that house. I've lived there for 10 years. You can't just take it. We're not taking anything. We're giving Emma a gift. You've benefited from the house for a decade. Now it's her turn. Her turn? This isn't a toy you're sharing between kids. This is my home, my inheritance from Grandma. Your grandmother left it to the family, Mom said. Her voice had gone cold. And we're the ones who decide how it's distributed. Emma needs it more. She's getting married. She's building a future. And what am I doing? Playing house? You know what I mean? You're established. You have a career. Emma is just starting out. Just starting out, at 25, with parents who'd funded her entire life, while I'd been working since I was 16. This isn't fair, I said. Life isn't fair, Sarah. You of all people should know that. Now, I need you to be reasonable about this. We'd like you out by the 15th of next month. That gives Emma time to plan renovations. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there staring at my phone. Reasonable. She wanted me to be reasonable while they stole my house. I called a lawyer that afternoon. I explained the situation. I sent him every bank statement showing my mortgage payments, every receipt from renovations, every piece of documentation I had. He reviewed everything and called me back within 2 hours. You have a case, he said. If you've been paying the mortgage and maintaining the property, and if your grandparents' will specifically left the house to you, your parents had a fiduciary duty as trustees to transfer the deed. We can fight this. Those words. We can fight this. They felt like oxygen. Do it, I said. But before my lawyer could send a letter, Emma made her move. 3 days after the dinner, I came home from work to find Emma standing on my porch. She was holding a manila envelope. My parents were standing behind her. All 3 of them looked like they were attending a ceremony. I got out of my car slowly. What's going on? Emma held up the envelope. Mom and Dad signed the deed over to me this morning. It's official. She pulled the deed out. My grandmother's house, transferred to Emma Louise Chen, dated yesterday. You need to move out by the end of the month, Emma said. She wasn't even pretending to be sorry. Jake and I want to start renovations. We're knocking out the wall between the kitchen and dining room, and that wallpaper in the bedroom has to go. The wallpaper I'd hung with my grandmother when I was 12. Sunflowers. She'd let me help. She'd said, someday this will be yours and you can decorate it however you want. Something snapped inside me. Get off my porch. Emma blinked. Excuse me? I said get off my porch, all of you. This is my house now, Emma said, waving the deed. I can stand wherever I want. The deed is fraudulent. My lawyer is filing an injunction tomorrow. That piece of paper means nothing. Dad stepped forward. Sarah, you're being unreasonable. We have every legal right to— You have no rights to this house. Grandma left it to me. You were supposed to be trustees. You violated that trust, so get the hell off my property before I call the police. Mom gasped. How dare you speak to us like that? How dare I? I laughed. It sounded unhinged even to my own ears. You stole my house. You've been planning this for months. You walked through my home behind my back. You've treated me like garbage my entire life. And you want to talk about respect? Emma's face twisted. You're being selfish. I'm getting married. I need this house. No, I said quietly. You want this house. There's a difference. Now leave. Before I make you leave. My dad puffed up. Are you threatening us? I'm telling you to get off my property. What you do next is up to you." We stared at each other for a long moment. Then Mom grabbed Emma's arm. "Come on, let her have her tantrum. She'll come to her senses." They left. I watched their car disappear down the street. Then I went inside, locked the door, and called a locksmith. Within 2 hours, every lock on the house was changed. Then I blocked all of their numbers and let my lawyer do his job. My lawyer moved fast. Within 48 hours, he'd filed a petition to void the deed transfer and sent a demand letter to my parents. The letter was beautiful in its simplicity. It laid out the facts. My grandparents' will, explicitly leaving the house to me. My parents' role as trustees. 10 years of mortgage payments, totaling over $120,000. Receipts for another $30,000 in renovations and repairs. Their breach of fiduciary duty, and the fraudulent transfer of property that wasn't legally theirs to give. The letter ended with a demand. Transfer the deed to me immediately, compensate me for all mortgage payments and renovation costs, or face a lawsuit for fraud, breach of trust, and conversion. My dad called from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message asking me to be reasonable and think about the family. I deleted it. Emma sent me a string of texts from a friend's phone. I didn't read past the first one where she called me a selfish bitch. I blocked that number too. Mom somehow got Daniel's number and called him, crying about how I was tearing the family apart. Daniel told her that she'd done that herself and hung up. My lawyer called them directly. "Respond to the letter by Friday or we file in court on Monday." They responded on Thursday. My parents' lawyer tried to argue that since the deed had been in their name, they had the right to transfer it. My lawyer shut that down immediately. The house had been left to me in a will. They were trustees. They'd accepted mortgage payments from me for a decade. They'd allowed me to make major repairs and renovations. They'd behaved in every way as if I were the owner. Any court would see the transfer to Emma as fraudulent. Their lawyer knew it. I could tell from the tone of his response letter. He was already trying to negotiate a settlement. It took 2 weeks of back and forth, but they finally caved. The deed was transferred to my name. Properly this time, legally, irrevocably, and they agreed to compensate me $130,000. That was my mortgage payments plus interest and a portion of the renovation costs. They paid it in installments. It hurt them. I could tell it hurt them, especially when they had to pull money from Emma's wedding fund. The wedding got downsized, way downsized. Instead of the sprawling country club reception for 300 guests, Emma and Jake had a small ceremony with 75 people at a local restaurant. No destination honeymoon in Italy. No custom designer dress. No house as a wedding gift. Emma called me from yet another number 2 days before her wedding. I answered because I was feeling generous. "I hope you're happy," she said. Her voice was shaking. "You ruined everything." "No," I said calmly. "You tried to steal my house. There's a difference. It was supposed to be mine. Mom and Dad promised." And there it was. They'd been planning this for a while, maybe years, maybe since the moment my grandparents died. "Goodbye, Emma," I said. And I hung up. I didn't go to the wedding. They didn't invite me anyway. I haven't spoken to my parents or Emma in 6 months. They tried reaching out a few times. Mom sent a birthday card. Dad left a voicemail on Christmas. Emma sent a passive-aggressive text about forgiveness and family. I didn't respond to any of it. Daniel asked me once if I regretted it, standing up to them, burning that bridge, taking back what was mine. I thought about it, really thought about it. Then I said no. For the first time in my life, I set a boundary. I said, "You can't treat me like this anymore," and I followed through. It cost me a relationship with my family. But what kind of relationship was it really? One where I was valued only for what I could provide and discarded the moment I stood up for myself. I live in my grandmother's house, my house now, legally, completely, without question. I wake up every morning on that porch with coffee and remember what my grandmother said. "This house is for you, Sarah." She was right. It was always mine. I just had to fight for it. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, If you've ever been the one who had to fight for what you deserved while someone else got it handed to them, drop a comment below. Have you ever had to cut off family to protect yourself? Do you think I went too far, or did I do what I had to do? If this story hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life tales of family drama, justice served, and standing up for yourself. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be a doormat anymore.
They handed me an empty box, wrapped in gold foil paper, tied with a red ribbon. Beautiful from the outside, like everything in this family. But when I pulled the lid off, nothing. No letter. No gift. Just air. I looked up from the table slowly. My mother smirked, her eyes flicking toward my niece, who was currently unwrapping her third gift, a personalized iPad case with her name stitched into it. "Your daughter doesn't need a party," my mother had said earlier that week when I offered to host a small celebration. "She's not the type to care about attention," she added, dismissively. Then she turned around and bought a 4-tier cake for my sister's child. Even after all these years, they still believed love had a hierarchy, and I was always last. I said nothing as I closed the empty box. My daughter, Ava, sitting quietly beside me, gave my hand a small squeeze. She didn't understand what just happened. Not fully. But I could see it in her eyes, the question. Why us? My father, ever the master of timing, raised his glass and chuckled. "Well, you never really sacrifice yourself for others anyway, Nina." The laughter that followed was light, effortless, as if what just happened wasn't cruel, as if the entire moment wasn't laced with humiliation. That was the thing about my family. They always knew how to dress cruelty up as tradition. I smiled politely, stayed seated, ate my slice of dry, overly sweet cake, watched my niece dance with her new headphones while Ava played with the same coloring book she brought from home. And in that moment, I didn't explode. I didn't cry. I didn't fight for my place at the table. I just decided. That night, after I tucked Ava into bed, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started untying all the threads I had used to keep this family comfortable. I canceled the vacation we were supposed to take next month, the one I paid for in full, even though I was only invited as a backup babysitter. I logged into the joint account I shared with my parents, the one I'd filled steadily for years with contributions for emergencies, groceries, birthday parties that somehow never included me. I transferred every cent out. Then I closed it. Next, I reviewed the paperwork for the car, the one I bought under my name, which they drove around like it was theirs. Insurance, payments, registration. All me. I put it up for sale the next morning. Within 72 hours, I had done what they never expected. I left them the same way they had always left me. Silently, but completely. Because when someone hands you an empty box, they're not giving you a joke. They're giving you permission to walk away. My name is Nina. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the day they laughed over an empty gift box, they had no idea what I'd take away next. My name has never been Nina, the favorite. It's never even been Nina, the respected. In my family, I've always been Nina, the provider. Nina, the afterthought. Nina, the one who pays. Growing up, I watched my sister get everything handed to her, birthday parties with ponies, designer clothes before she could spell Gucci, our parents beaming like she'd hung the stars. Me? I got sensible shoes, a savings bond, and silence. They never said they loved me less. They didn't have to. Love lived in action, and all theirs went in one direction. When my sister dropped out of college, my parents said, "She just needs a break." When I got a scholarship, they said, "Good. One less bill to worry about." When she had her baby at 21, the whole family rallied around her like she was royalty. I bought her diapers, paid her rent, covered her car note for a year. All without being asked. They didn't thank me. They expected it. Because I had a good job. Because I was responsible. Because I didn't need as much. But that's the thing about being the responsible one. They start treating you like a resource, not a person. The first time I paid off my mother's maxed-out credit card, she told people it was handled. When I bought her new eyeglasses, she said my sister picked the frames. When I took Ava, my own daughter, On her first vacation, I had to lie and say it was a work trip, because otherwise, they would have guilted me into taking the whole family. And I would have, because I wanted their approval so badly. I kept giving and giving until I was broke in ways no one could see. They never knew how often I skipped dinners to make those car payments. They never asked what I wanted for my birthday. They never noticed that the only reason Ava had a proper backpack was because I stopped buying new clothes for myself. But I never complained, because I thought being quiet about it made me strong. It didn't. It made me invisible. And the worst part? I let them. Until the night of the empty box. Until I watched my parents beam while my niece unwrapped electronics and gift cards and custom jewelry, all while Ava clapped politely beside her with nothing in her lap. Until my father laughed and called me selfish, as I sat there with an unpaid trip in his name, a car in his driveway with my money behind it, and a child who only ever got secondhand attention from the people who claimed to love us both. That's when something in me snapped. Not loud, not angry, just quiet and final. I realized I wasn't the backbone of this family. I was the doormat. And the moment you realize that, you stop opening the door. So yes, I locked the accounts. Yes, I canceled the trip. Yes, I sold the car. But no, I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it out of self-respect. Because the girl they forgot? She remembered herself. I've swallowed 1,000 little betrayals in my life. I've smiled through dismissive comments, forgave slights disguised as jokes, and nodded politely while my parents turned every milestone of mine into a footnote in someone else's story. But that box? That empty, beautiful, intentional box? It was the last time I would make myself smaller to keep their egos full. Let me explain how we got there. Ava was turning 7. I'd saved for months. Not for anything extravagant. Just a small gathering with a cake, some paper crowns, and the joy she deserved. I told my mom I wanted to host it at her house. Just family. Just love. She frowned and said, "Your daughter doesn't need a party. She's not that kind of child." I didn't even know what that meant. She said it like Ava was less deserving because she wasn't loud or demanding. Because she was polite. Soft. Observant. Exactly like I was. Instead, my mom proposed a joint dinner with the whole family, meaning my sister and her daughter. She promised it would be fair. Equal gifts. Equal cake. I wanted to believe her. Because I always wanted to believe her. So I canceled the party. I told Ava we'd celebrate with Grandma and Grandpa instead, that they were planning something special. She nodded. She always trusts me. That night, I watched my sister's daughter tear through gift after gift while Ava waited her turn patiently, the way I taught her. There was no second cake. No song with her name in it. Just that gold-wrapped box they handed me with a smug little smile. I had to pretend I didn't already know what was coming. And still, when I lifted the lid and saw it was empty, it punched the air out of my chest. Ava leaned closer. "Mama, did they forget something inside?" I stared into her eyes, wide, hopeful, and I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Because I knew exactly what they'd say. It was just a joke. You take things too seriously. Don't make a scene. You always ruin everything. So I smiled. I hugged Ava and said, "It's okay, baby. I already got the best gift, you." She beamed. And they all thought I meant it. That night, after I put her to bed, I sat in the living room with the empty box in my lap and stared at it like it might open itself and reveal a lesson I'd missed. But it didn't. There was no lesson left to learn. Just the truth. They had never planned to give Ava anything. They had never planned to treat her like she mattered. And they certainly hadn't changed. That box was a mirror. And I saw it clearly now. I wasn't being excluded by mistake. I was being excluded by design. Because I was the reminder of everything they didn't want to face. That I worked harder than all of them. That I gave more. That I never demanded a spotlight. Only to be seen. And still, they laughed. Still, they handed me nothing. So I stopped giving them everything. That night I made a list. Not of people to confront, but of things to take back. I didn't scream. I didn't post cryptic quotes. I didn't cut them off. I just started to disappear. The morning after the dinner, while they were still gloating over their perfect evening, I opened my laptop and began what I now call Operation Vanish. First, the trip. A family vacation had been planned for the fall, a beach house rental, 2 cars, an Airbnb stocked with groceries. I had paid for everything. The agreement, of course, was that they'd reimburse me in pieces. A lie I'd accepted for years. I went to the reservation page and hit cancel. Full refund. Straight to my private account. Then I texted the family group chat. Vacations off. Personal reasons. No one replied. Next, the bank. There was a joint emergency account I opened 3 years ago. It started as a safety net for my parents, a shared pot I quietly kept filled to cover surprise bills, medication, or unexpected expenses that always seemed to fall on me. I drained it, moved every cent to an account in Ava's name. Then I closed the original. 2 hours later, I received a text from my mother. Did something happen to the bank account? I left it on read. Third, the car. My parents drove a vehicle I bought under my name. Payments came from my account. Insurance? Mine. Registration? Mine. The only thing they contributed was gas sometimes. I called the dealership. The payoff amount was less than I expected. I sold it the same week. I never told them. The following Friday, my dad called. Straight to voicemail. Then a message. Hey, the car isn't in the driveway. Did you take it to get serviced? I blocked the number. By Sunday, I was nearly done. I had stopped babysitting my niece. Stopped answering questions in the family group chat. Stopped replying to my sister's casual, "Can you help me with?" texts. I didn't even announce my exit. Because that's the thing about people who only value you when you're useful. The second you stop giving, they start noticing. Not you, your absence. The silence. The missed favors. The drying well. But I didn't vanish from the world. I became louder in the places that mattered. Ava and I had more time. More money. More peace. We cooked together at night. Took walks without interruptions. Read books. Watched cartoons. Laughed. Really laughed, without checking phones for someone else's demand. One night, she looked up at me and said, "Mama, you look happier. Did something good happen?" I kissed her forehead and said, "Yes, baby. Something very good happened." I stopped being the background character in everyone else's story. I stopped financing the spotlight for people who never clapped for me. And most of all, I finally started choosing us. It started like clockwork. Monday morning, 9:42 a.m., a text from my sister. "Did you take the car? Mom and Dad are freaking out." I muted the conversation. Then came the emails. My father, the same man who once said I never sacrifice for others, was now requesting access to the shared account. Except it wasn't there anymore. Gone. Closed. Emptied without a whisper. By Wednesday, my mother sent a voice note. Dramatic, quivering, classic. "We're trying to pay the electric bill. The card isn't working. What's going on?" Then the cherry on top. A Facebook post from my sister. Just vague enough to avoid admitting fault, but specific enough to bait sympathy. It's crazy how one person's decision can leave a whole family struggling. We're all just trying our best. Prayers appreciated. The comments rolled in. "Stay strong, love. Some people are so selfish." Is this about Nina? I thought she was helping with your parents. I didn't engage. Didn't comment. Didn't react. I simply watched. Watched the panic unfold like a play I'd seen 100 times before. Only this time, I wasn't cast as the supporting character. This time, I was in the audience. And I wasn't clapping. By Friday, I got a text from my dad. No more small talk. No more pride. We're not asking for much. Just help us get through the month. I don't know what's going on with you lately. I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about how many months I got through without their help. How many nights I chose between dinner and gas. How many times I smiled through exhaustion so Ava wouldn't feel it. And yet, not once, had they ever asked me how I was. I typed a reply. Simple. Final. If I'm such a burden, I figured you'd be relieved to be free of me. Then I blocked him. Because here's the truth. People who only love you when you're useful don't know how to handle you when you're whole. And for the first time, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't overdrawn. I wasn't financing the fantasy of a perfect family anymore. I was just free. Ava and I took a small weekend trip. Just us. A little cabin by the lake, warm cocoa, board games, and real, honest joy. No guilt. No fake gratitude. No phone buzzing every 5 minutes with someone else's emergency disguised as an urgent favor. She built a snow angel that looked like it had wings. Mama, she asked, do you think people get tired of giving too much? I blinked. Why do you ask that? She shrugged. You used to look tired all the time, but now you look lighter. I hugged her so tight she squeaked. She was right. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I had just put down a weight that was never mine to carry. And the people watching it slip out of their hands? They weren't confused. They were panicking. Because the woman they once drained was gone. And the silence she left behind? It was louder than all their demands combined. It didn't take long for silence to turn to entitlement. By the end of the week, my mother called me from 4 different numbers. One voicemail stuck out. You're hurting your family. You know that, right? We've always tried our best for you. Don't punish us just because your sister gets more attention. That was the line. Not we're sorry. Not you're right. Just don't punish us. As if all I'd done was throw a tantrum. As if their years of erasure could be explained away by a shrug and the phrase, we did our best. Then came the text from my sister. Are you done sulking yet? You know you're making this harder than it needs to be. Everyone's suffering because you're acting brand new. Acting brand new. That was her favorite line. She used it years ago when I bought my first car without asking Dad to co-sign. She used it again when I got my promotion and moved into a nicer apartment. And now, she was using it because I stopped being their wallet. So this time I answered. Not with a rant. Not with rage. But with precision. I waited until morning. Let them all stew overnight. Then I opened the family group chat, the same one they only used when they needed things, and typed. If I'm the selfish one, why was I the only one paying for everything? If I'm the problem, why didn't you notice until the money stopped? If I was never the favorite, why did you assume I'd always take care of you? Then I added, the favorite daughter is in a bank. Ask her to cover the bills. Ask her to return the car. Ask her to plan the next trip. I'm done. I muted the group after that. Didn't wait for replies. Didn't care what they said. Because it wasn't about them anymore. It was about Ava watching me reclaim my voice. It was about finally showing her that boundaries aren't mean, they're necessary. And I'll admit, it felt good. Not petty. Not spiteful. Just clean. Later that day, I got a text from my cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. I saw your sister's post. I just want to say, good for you. You've been their crutch for way too long. I smiled. Because behind every selfish daughter is a family who relied on her silence. But I wasn't silent anymore. That evening, Ava helped me frost cupcakes we made from scratch. We danced in the kitchen, just us, messy and laughing, no audience needed. And while the rest of them were passing blame like a bowl of stale chips, I was finally passing peace around my own table. No more guilt. No more explanations. Just this. They could no longer afford the daughter they threw away because she'd finally invested in herself. The emotional punch, the line that ends it all. It was just after midnight when I heard it. Muffled sobs. I was cleaning up the living room. Ava had fallen asleep on the couch after our movie night when I heard the crying through the thin walls of our shared apartment complex. At first, I didn't register it. But then I heard the voice. Familiar. Shaking. My mother's. She was on the phone. I couldn't hear the other person, but her words cut through the silence like a blade dipped in regret. I don't know what happened. She just shut everything off. We didn't mean to hurt her. We just didn't think she'd go this far. Everything's gone. The money. The car. The vacation. It's all gone. My chest rose, then fell. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not really. I just felt the finality of it. They finally realized the well had dried, and they weren't prepared for a life where I wasn't carrying the weight. Then came my father's voice, quieter, tighter. She's being cruel. And then the pause. Then the sound of my mother crying harder, gasping between the words. Why would she do this to us? I stood at the door, hand resting on the knob. There was a time I would have melted right there. Opened the door. Offered comfort. Softened my spine to hold theirs up again. But that version of me? She was gone. I knocked once. The crying stopped instantly. Then I opened the door just a crack, stepped into the hallway, and looked directly at my mother, slumped on the bottom stair, phone in her lap, eyes swollen. She stared up at me like I was a stranger. And maybe I was. I walked down one step. Just one. Just enough to look her in the eye and say, "Ask your favorite daughter." Her mouth opened slightly, as if to protest. But I didn't let her. I turned around, walked back inside, locked the door behind me. Not in anger, not in spite, in peace. Because there's something powerful about not needing to yell to be heard. There's something divine in watching people sit in the emptiness they once handed you. I poured myself a glass of water, covered Ava with a blanket, brushed a curl off her cheek and whispered, "You'll never have to beg for love." And I meant it. They had called me selfish for choosing silence. But they never saw what it cost me to stay. Now, the cost belonged to them. And the invoice was past due. It's been 3 months since the empty box. 3 months since I shut every open tab I'd left in their lives. Accounts, favors, financing, forgiveness. And in that time, something wild happened. I started to breathe differently. Slower. Fuller. Like I finally had lungs that belonged to me. I didn't return the messages. Didn't show up for the fake peace offerings. Didn't respond to the vague social media posts meant to guilt me back into place. I just lived. I watched Ava thrive, really thrive. She laughs louder now. She dances in the kitchen without flinching. She draws without asking, "Do you think they'll like this?" Because we don't live for them anymore. We live for each other. And one day, as we baked together a small cake, just because she asked me, "Mama, do you still love Grandma?" I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I finally had a different one. "I love the version of her I hoped she could be," I said. "But sometimes, baby, the best love you give is the kind you give to yourself." She nodded slowly and smiled like she understood more than a 7-year-old should. And maybe she did, because she saw it all. She saw me exhausted from giving. She saw me forgotten in the middle of giving. And now, she sees me whole because I stopped. I used the vacation money they never repaid to take Ava to a mountain town for her spring break. We hiked. We sang. We made our own traditions. I used the refund from the family trip to start an online baking business. Ava helped me name it The Second Slice. Because that's what we're doing now. Living the life we should have had. The slice we were always too polite to ask for. Now ours, and full of flavor. Orders are growing. People love it. And I love that the first cake I ever baked without their approval became the first step toward freedom. As for my parents, their world is smaller now. No more free rides. No more hidden support. And the sister they prioritized? Turns out, favoritism doesn't pay rent. Last I heard, they're still waiting for someone to help them catch up on bills. But I'm not their someone anymore. I'm the woman they underestimated. The one they handed an empty box and expected to smile. And I did. But now? Now I fill my own boxes. With joy. With peace. With enough. We celebrated Ava's 8th birthday last weekend. Just us. A few friends. Laughter that wasn't forced. And as she blew out her candles, she whispered to me, "This was the best birthday ever." I hugged her and thought, yes, because it wasn't borrowed from someone else's approval. It was built with love. Our love. The kind that doesn't come with conditions or comparisons. Just care. They handed me an empty box and laughed. But they didn't know I was already full. I gave them everything until I realized the best gift was keeping it for myself. I came home from a client dinner. opened my banking app out of habit, and froze. $360,000.
Gone.
Every cent I had saved over 8 years. Every sleepless night. Every freelance contract. Every second job. Every bonus stacked and counted for one goal. My first house. I blinked. Refreshed the screen.
Still gone.
I called the bank, heart in my throat. The representative calmly explained that the withdrawal was made legally by someone with joint access. Someone I had once, years ago, added for emergency only. My parents. I didn't call right away. I didn't scream. I drove straight to their house, silent the whole way there. My father was in the backyard, grilling. My mother was arranging roses on the table like it was any other evening. My sister sat with her legs crossed, scrolling on her phone, wearing a designer sweater I knew I hadn't seen before. "I need to talk to you," I said, barely managing to keep my voice level. My father smiled. "Ah, you saw it?" I blinked. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Thanks for your naivety, Maya. Your money has now secured your sister's bright future. She's going to London, the full program. Travel, tuition, everything." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "You stole from me." My mother rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. "Stole? Maya, please. You've been hoarding that money for years. For what? A little house in the suburbs? A girl like you would have wasted it anyway." And my sister? She didn't even look up. Just smirked, like she'd already won. I couldn't hold back anymore. I laughed. Once.
Loudly.
A strange, hollow laugh that startled all three of them. Because the money they took wasn't mine. Not really. Not anymore. You see, I'm not just some naive little saver they thought I was. They never asked how I doubled that original $360,000. They never asked how I paid off my debts early, or how I took 2 years off work and somehow came back richer. Because they never cared. They only saw the visible account, the decoy I kept for appearances. They never even imagined there might be more. That I might be more. So as they stood there, smug and stupid and sure that they'd ruined me, I smiled wider. Because the account they drained? It was bait. They took the trap. And now they taught me exactly what I needed to know. I turned to leave. My father called after me. "You're being childish, Maya. This is family." I stopped at the door, looked over my shoulder.
No.
This was business. You made that clear. And I walked out. My name is Maya. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the money they stole was a test. And now, the daughter they built to serve them was about to burn their future to the ground. I wasn't raised to be loved. I was raised to be useful. I was the firstborn, the mature one, the dependable daughter, the built-in fixer. They didn't celebrate me. They utilized me. While my younger sister, Alina, was praised for her looks, charm, and potential, I was handed responsibilities. At 10, I was babysitting her. At 13, I was balancing grocery budgets. At 16, I was forging my own permission slips because my parents were too busy to sign anything that wasn't about Alina. They taught me early that attention was currency, and I didn't have enough to buy any. But what I could earn was usefulness. So I became the best at it. I worked part-time jobs through college, kept my grades perfect, cooked dinner when mom was too tired, covered for dad when his business failed quietly behind closed doors. And still they barely looked at me. Alina, meanwhile, coasted through life on a golden float. Failed classes? She's just figuring herself out. Expensive hobbies? She deserves to try things. Impulsive trips, new boyfriends, big mistakes? They were always learning experiences. But I was held to a different standard. I was the fallback plan, the dependable one, the piggy bank in human form. When I got my first full-time job, I thought maybe they'd be proud. Instead, they asked for help with the mortgage. I gave it. When I bought a used car for cash, they borrowed it for 6 months. When I opened a savings account, they casually asked to be added, just in case anything ever happened. I didn't hesitate, because I didn't think they'd take it. I thought, maybe this time, they'd prove me wrong. They didn't. That $360,000 wasn't a number to me. It was 8 years of skipped vacations, packed lunches, quiet birthdays, and 3 a.m. freelance deadlines. It was my first house. My only plan. They knew all that. And they still took it. With a smile. Because they never saw me as someone who deserved. Just someone who provided. But here's what they didn't see coming. That usefulness they weaponized? It made me dangerous. Because I didn't just save. I studied. I learned. I planned. And over the years, while I handed them the visible crumbs, I was building my own feast behind closed doors. I funneled freelance income into diversified investments. I put money in a trust. I bought digital assets under an alias. I partnered quietly in 2 early-stage startups. I registered an LLC abroad. Everything they thought I was saving was already doubled and buried in places they could never touch. The account they drained? It wasn't my future. It was my trap. Because if you want to know who someone really is, give them access to your peace and see what they do with it.
They chose theft.
They chose betrayal. So now I was free of obligation, free of guilt, free to become someone they couldn't control and couldn't predict. People say I'm quiet, polite, easy to overlook. They're right, and that's exactly why I win. Because what my parents thought was my entire savings was nothing more than a decoy. The $360,000 they drained? It was technically mine, but it wasn't my wealth. It was my bait. Let me explain. Years ago, when I started making decent money, I opened 2 accounts. One joint savings account I told my parents about, and one private one they never knew existed. Guess which one they always asked about? I'd intentionally funnel a portion of my income into the joint account. Enough to look impressive. Enough to prove I was doing well. I let them brag about it to family. Maya's so responsible. She's saved over 6 figures already. Meanwhile, I moved my real income, my consulting contracts, my stock payouts, my crypto flips, into separate channels. By the time I was 29, I had built over $1.1 million across diversified accounts, trust funds, and business equity. But my parents? They were watching the wrong wallet. They always were. The funny part? They thought they were clever, withdrawing the money just before I closed on a house. They thought they beat me to the punch. It's too late for her to pull it back now. I overheard my mother say the day after the theft. It's done. She'll forgive us eventually. They really thought I was that predictable. But they didn't know the house deal was fake. They didn't know I had forged the timeline emails, fake agent contacts, even a fake property listing. I made it believable because I wanted them to think they were stealing something precious. They were always going to take it. I just made sure they did it when I was ready. Because what they stole was recoverable. It was tracked, isolated, and insured. Yes, insured. I had moved those funds through a business pipeline the month before. Filed it as capital movement. When I filed the theft report and provided the evidence, names, access logs, IP locations, timestamps, the bank's fraud division flagged it within 48 hours. They'll get a nice little investigation out of it. And I'll get my claim reimbursed. Quietly. Without them ever realizing. But I won't tell them that. Let them think they robbed me blind. Let them think they won. Because I wasn't after the money. I was after truth. And they gave it to me in the clearest language they speak, greed. They confirmed everything I'd spent a decade trying not to believe. That I was never the daughter they protected. I was the daughter they exploited. So now the script flips. They have no idea what's already moving behind the scenes. But the car? That was in my name. The house? Joint investment deed that I can now legally pull out of. Their golden daughter's tuition? Backed by a guarantor.
Me.
And I've just sent the notice to dissolve that agreement. They took from the wrong daughter. But they did it with such confidence. I almost want to thank them. Because in robbing me, they revealed everything.
And now?
I'm done playing pawn. I'm about to become the architect of their unraveling. You don't survive in a family like mine by being emotional. You survive by being strategic. And I had been planning this for years. The moment I realized I was just their backup plan, not their daughter, was the moment I started thinking like a banker, not a child. So no, I wasn't shocked when they stole the $360,000.
I wanted them to. Because now,
I had everything I needed. Intent,
opportunity.
evidence, and best of all, silence. I didn't yell when I found out, didn't fight, didn't try to reason. Because the moment you raise your voice, they dismiss you as hysterical. But silence? Silence terrifies selfish people. It makes them wonder what you know, what you're doing, what you're planning. And I was planning everything. I started with the utilities. For years, I'd been quietly paying their electricity, phone, and internet bills through autodraft. No thanks, no acknowledgement, just quiet dependence. I canceled it all in one evening. The next morning, I got a text from my dad. Hey, do you know what's going on with the power company? The bill didn't process this month. I didn't reply. That weekend, I removed myself from the cosign line of credit I'd helped them open. They had no idea I could do that without their signature, but I could.
Because I set it up that way.
One letter, one fax, one form.
Done.
Their credit dropped by 72 points in 2 days. Then I cashed out of the family investment they'd forgotten. I still had a 49% claim to a silent stake in the house my father built himself, but funded with my money 5 years ago. I sent a formal withdrawal notice through my attorney. They'd either have to buy me out or sell. And I already knew they couldn't afford to do either. Meanwhile, my sister? Still parading around Europe like she was untouchable. Until she wasn't. Because the final string I cut was the guarantor form for her university program. She was accepted into a prestigious international business school. What no one knew was that the school required a financial backer from the home country, someone legally responsible if tuition lapsed. That person was me. I had done it years ago, quietly, to help her get in. A favor she never even acknowledged. So I revoked it. One email, one scan.
Done.
The school's financial office emailed her the next day. I can only imagine the panic. The money they stole? It was already spent. But their security blanket?
Me?
I was gone. And all the systems they used to lean on were starting to collapse. Quietly, slowly, relentlessly. No explosions. No screaming matches. Just doors closing. I knew they'd come knocking eventually. But this time, I wouldn't be home. Because they thought I was some fragile little savings account with a soft voice and a good heart. They didn't realize I was watching, waiting, setting the table for a reckoning. I let them steal from me, so I could finally walk away without guilt. So when they called it family, I could say, with clean hands and a calm smile, this was business. You know what no one ever tells you? Leaving isn't the hard part. Watching them realize you were the foundation, that's the satisfying part. Once they drained the $360,000, they thought I'd scream,
Cry. Beg.
Instead, I got to work. Operation Extraction had one goal: remove every single link, dollar, document, and obligation that tied me to them. And I started with the most personal one. My name. I legally changed it just the middle and last. Quietly. Efficiently. They wouldn't know until they saw it in a headline or a contract. I updated my legal and business records, pulled my signature off every co-owned item, from the joint safety deposit box to the emergency insurance account I once opened for my dad after his heart scare. All gone. Every time they tried to use something with my name on it, they'd hit a wall. And I didn't stop there. Remember that modest car I bought for the family years ago? The one my mom drove like she owned it? I reported it as reclaimed.
Because it was still legally mine.
And guess what? She'd never transferred the title. Classic oversight. One tow truck later, the car was in my name and back in my garage. I sold it the next week and used the funds to upgrade Ava's school account. Oh, right. Ava. My daughter. Did I mention my parents never once offered to babysit? Never celebrated her birthdays. Never visited her school. And yet, somehow, my mother always found a way to call herself Grandma of the Year on Facebook. So I deleted every photo of Ava from their shared cloud folder. Revoked permissions. Digitally erased the narrative they never earned. It was surgical. Every time they turned a corner in their life, something was missing. The light bill? Unpaid. The retirement account my dad didn't even realize I was still contributing to? Frozen. The travel credit card my sister used under my name to book hotels?
Closed.
Piece by piece, I dismantled the life they built on top of me. And while they were flailing, I was flying. I moved into a high-rise condo, signed 2 new consulting clients, started planning a retreat for young women like me, the forgotten daughters, the quiet providers, the ones who paid for everyone else's peace. I didn't announce it, didn't flaunt it, because I didn't need them to see me rise. I just needed them to feel the fall. One night, I got a message from my father. "We need to talk. What you're doing is petty and hurtful." It was the first time he'd reached out in weeks. And still, there was no apology. Just blame. Just deflection. So I sent back one line. "You stole a test, not my life. And I've already passed." Then I blocked his number. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about removal. Removing myself from their chaos. Removing the lies I used to tell myself to survive. Removing the guilt they'd carefully embedded in every thank you they never said. I wasn't leaving angry. I was leaving free. And the family that thought I'd collapse without them? They were finally learning the truth. I wasn't their backup plan. I was their only plan. And I just walked out the front door. It started with a flight. A canceled one. Alina had booked a business class seat to Milan for a networking conference her university recommended, probably more for the selfies than the seminars. She posted the itinerary weeks in advance. Airplane, London, Milan, Barcelona. Hashtag Boss Babe in Europe. But when she arrived at Heathrow, she was told the booking was cancelled. Insufficient funds. She called the airline, then the credit card company. She tried to play the part of the rondelete, but the truth was simpler. I closed the card, because it was mine. And for years, she used it with my permission, for emergencies, just this once. "You'll get it back, right?" She never did. So I took it back. And that was just the start. 2 weeks later, her university sent a notice. Tuition installment overdue. She emailed them frantically, attached a screenshot of the payment promise, guaranteed under my name. They replied, "We regret to inform you that your financial guarantor has formally withdrawn responsibility. Please settle the remaining balance within 14 days or your enrollment will be reviewed." I had been her invisible net. Every semester, every fee, every glitch in her student visa, fixed by me, not because I loved her more than she loved me, but because I wanted to believe that if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. They never did. So I stopped giving. Alina messaged me 3 times. Once with fake sweetness. "Hey, can you help? I think something went wrong with the payments." Once with passive aggression. "It's really messed up that you'd sabotage your own sister." And finally, desperation. "They're talking about suspension. I don't have the money. Please, Maya. Please." I didn't reply. Not because I was cruel. Because I was done. I wasn't her invisible donor anymore. I wasn't her faceless fallback. I was the sister she ignored at dinners. The one she rolled her eyes at when I didn't dress trendy. The one she stole from and watched my parents laugh about it like it was a prank. She had posted once, back when she got accepted into her program. All thanks to the support of my amazing parents. Hashtag blessed, hashtag grateful. I was never mentioned. And that's fine. Because now, she could run to them for help. Except their house was on the verge of foreclosure. Their bank account was under investigation. Their network was dried up. And her amazing parents? Busy trying to get the lights turned back on. The golden child wasn't golden anymore. She was just another shadow in a sinking ship. And I was sitting by the window of my new condo, watching the sunset, eating takeout, my phone on silent. I didn't need an update to know how it was going. Because for the first time, their lives were playing out without my money propping them up. And the silence that once haunted me, now it healed me. Because no amount of status, no shiny degree, no pretty pictures in foreign cafes could save her from the fact that her whole world had been financed by the sister she mocked. And that sister just pulled the plug. It started small. A single email. No subject line. Just, "Can we talk?" I didn't open it. Then came the messages. From my mother. "Maya, please. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be. From my father, this is beneath you. We're your family. From Alina, full breakdown mode. They're threatening to kick me out. I didn't know you'd do this.
Please.
Please. Each one more desperate than the last. They didn't realize. I wasn't being cold. I was being clear. They had made a choice. When they took my money and laughed. When they called me naive. When they said I'd waste it anyway. They knew what they were doing. They just didn't think I'd respond like this.
They thought I'd cry.
Instead, I built walls thick, quiet, and unbreakable. They tried calling. From new numbers. Old numbers. Blocked numbers. They tried messaging on platforms I forgot I still had. And I let every single alert flash across my screen. Unread. Unanswered. Until one voicemail broke the pattern. It was my father's voice, but not the version I grew up with. No arrogance. No power. Just collapse. We didn't think you'd actually cut us off. Your mother's not sleeping. Your sister's losing her place. We're drowning, Maya. We didn't mean for it to go this far. That line. We didn't mean for it to go this far.
It stuck with me.
Because they did. They meant for me to go that far, far enough to lose everything. They just never imagined I'd stop turning around for them. That afternoon, I got a delivery. An envelope. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, a letter, shaky, rushed. From my mother. You don't have to forgive us. Just help. That's what family does. And taped to the back. A childhood photo of me. 7 years old. Smiling. Missing front teeth. They must have dug it out like a relic, hoping sentiment would do what guilt couldn't. I stared at the picture. That little girl? She deserved love. Deserved protection. Deserved to grow up in a home that didn't label her as less just because she didn't shine the way her sister did.
And now?
Now she was safe. Because I had built a life around her, and for her, that they could never touch again. I took the photo, folded it carefully, and placed it in my drawer. The letter? I burned it. The next morning, I sent them a single message. One line. No hello. No emotion. No wiggle room. Funny how fast the future collapses when it's built on stolen bricks. Then I blocked them. Every single one. No more explanations. No more defense. No more pleading to be seen. I was done. Not angry. Finished. Because the one thing they were never prepared for was the girl they used as their foundation finally walking away and letting the whole damn house fall. They thought they took everything from me. What they actually did was pay for my freedom. Because with every selfish decision, every cruel remark, every dollar they stole, they severed the last threads I was too loyal to cut.
So I thanked them. Silently.
And then I moved forward. The week after I blocked them, I closed on a property in the hills. Quiet. Peaceful.
Mine.
Paid in full. I renovated the guest room into a studio. For writing, dreaming, resting. The walls are lined with books I never had time to read when I was busy funding everyone else's comfort. The kitchen is always stocked. The bills are on autopay for my home. And Ava? She's thriving. She doesn't ask about them anymore. She doesn't flinch when the doorbell rings. Because our home is filled with softness now, not survival. I used a portion of my actual savings, the part they never touched, to launch a mentorship fund for girls like me. First generation. Overlooked. Used as emotional ATMs by the people who were supposed to love them. It's called Daughters Who Stayed. Because we did stay far too long. Now, we build exits. The fund quietly covers tuition, housing, therapy, or whatever peace looks like for the girls who never got to have it. No fanfare. Just healing. Last month, a journalist reached out. Wanted to do a story on my financial journey. Self-made millionaire, estranged from her family. I declined the interview. Not because I'm ashamed, but because they don't deserve a spotlight. I'm not the girl they forgot anymore. I'm the woman they lost. And the world I built? It's not built on spite. It's built on clarity. They taught me what not to become. And in doing so, they handed me the blueprint for becoming unstoppable. Sometimes I still think about that moment. My father laughing, my mother's smugness, Alina's indifference. I think about how sure they were that I was weak, how proud they were to tell me the money I earned had secured someone else's bright future. And I smile, because that was the last moment they'd ever feel power over me. Now my power is quiet,
but vast.
it's in the way my phone doesn't light up with demands anymore. It's in the way my bank account only reflects my own needs. It's in Ava's smile, in the stillness, in the enoughness of our days. And that girl, the one they underestimated, she didn't waste anything. She just invested it in the one place they never could control, herself. They stole a decoy and called it a victory. But I built an empire in silence. And the daughter they erased from the story, she became the one they'll never be able to rewrite.